Ok. Boa tarde a todos. Good afternoon, Mr. Sikes. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be chatting with you.
That will be a great chat indeed. Let me introduce you. Robert Orion Sikes is a lifetime natural competitive bodybuilder. That in itself, it's already a good title for you, man.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, and how did you begin your career in bodybuilding?
Yeah, so I started lifting when I was a junior in high school. I was 115 pounds. I was just super small, didn't have any confidence, probably wanted to get bigger to talk to the ladies more confidently. And my uncle was a football player and he had been working out, so I kind of wanted to try and emulate what he had done. And he showed me how to do a bicep curl, and from there it was all history, man. I just fell in love with the sport, fell in love with bodybuilding, and then that became my obsession. And I started training every single day, put on quite a bit of muscle that first year, and that was the first sport where it's like my success is a direct result of the fruits of my labor. Like there was no team playing event. It was like 100%, you reap what you sow, which I appreciated. And I just fell in love with it. So I started diving into bodybuilding. I was reading all the magazines. I started competing. My first show was my sophomore year in college, and did everything wrong. Didn't really know what I was doing. Wasn't following a ketogenic diet at that point. And I've competed, I guess, in 10 different shows now. And I went pro in 2017, and then I went pro again in a different federation this past year in 2023.
And you did begin in a keto diet. You begin with the traditional high carb, high protein. Tell a little bit about this.
Yeah, so high carb, high protein, very low fat. And the first bodybuilding competition I did, the first prep I did, I didn't do anything right. Like I was dieting far too aggressively. I cut my calories far too low. I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks. So
Whoa.
way too aggressive. I got really lean, but I lost a lot of muscle in the process. And then after that first show, I had like a bunch of disordered eating tendencies. I gained like 20 pounds in a day, really messed with my head. And I was kind of struggling with, eating disorders for the next 3 years after that. But I traditionally followed a conventional diet of high carbs, high protein, low fat. And then I stumbled on keto kind of by accident in 2014, 2015. And since then, I've been strict keto ever since. So that just seems to be a much better option for me.
And when you get to know the keto diet, you said you were having some eating disorders like compulsive eating.
A little bit of everything, man. Like when I did that first competition, I dieted down really quickly, got really lean, and I just became like that became my identity. I was a bodybuilder. But then after that show was over, even though I won that show, I was so deprived, so depleted. I just started eating everything in sight. A lot of sugars, lots of junk foods, lots of desserts, and I gained all that weight so quickly, and it really just messed with my own self image and self confidence. And I would eat and binge, and then I would purge, and it just became a negative feedback loop that lasted for years. And I'd played around with a bunch of different diets trying to figure out what worked. And for me, the first thing that really worked was keto, because I didn't really feel guilty about the foods I was eating at that point, because none of it was processed foods, none of it was sugar. It was all just quality, well-formulated foods. And in eating that, I think my hormones stabilized, my relationship with food improved, and I didn't feel guilty around the types of foods I was eating anymore, which helped me break free of that disordered eating tendency.
Interesting. And when you in the bodybuilding, everything is heavily personalized. You have things that just work for Robert Sikes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've everything's a little bit different. Like, I track all my macros, I weigh everything out. So what my body responds to is going to be a little bit different from what somebody else's body responds to. You can follow the same principle, the same protocol, but like the actual individual macronutrient breakdown is going to be a little bit different from person to person. And I had coaches when I was doing a traditional diet with carbohydrates, but once I switched over to keto, like there was not really any bodybuilders that were doing it with keto that I was aware of. So I kind of had to learn myself, what worked well for my body, what didn't, how to tweak things properly. And I just got really in tune with my body and what worked well and what didn't. And then I kind of built my own ketogenic protocol from that, which I've then applied to other people, other clients, and I've been able to kind of replicate that success with them too.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I discovered keto 2017,
Hmm.
and I became a carnivore at 2019, and
Nice.
it was the best decision for me. Not just because the body and the energy, but mainly because I I begin to have much more energy, and I never been too heavy. I never been fat. I think I was even thinner than you when you begin to bodybuild,
Yeah.
but the carnivore diet made me. I think it made me more prone to that my body is more reliable. I can trust my body more, and keto is a great state to be.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So, but unfortunately, in the mainstream, we have only you have that phrase that said you can only gain muscle mass if you eat some carbs. You eat a lot of carbs. Here in
Hmm.
Brazil, we have a explosion of bodybuilding, and we have athletes and influencers, and the message is unanimous. You have to eat much carbs. You have to eat many carbs to get your weight to go heavy, and to get the volume that you have to be bodybuilding. But let's begin with the beginning. Why it's so hard to gain muscle mass?
Well, people oftentimes they just don't eat enough food when they're like, I talk to a lot of people that have a hard time building muscle, and it's oftentimes because they're just simply not eating enough. And ideally, you need to be in a caloric surplus to build more lean tissue. And then oftentimes they're just simply not eating enough of the right food, so not ample protein. And then they're not training hard enough. Like, you've got to subject your body to enough stimuli to give it reason to grow beyond its current state. So if you're going into the gym and you're on your phone on Instagram the whole time, taking 10-minute rest sets, like, you're not really giving your body reason to grow. But if you're going in there and you're really tackling it hard, then your body is going to have enough stimulus to warrant that growth. And if you're doing that coupled with eating the right amount of food, eating the right foods, and you're recovering properly, getting ample sleep, then you've got all the building blocks in place to build more muscle tissue. I mean, that's what you need for muscle protein synthesis. The carbohydrates, I mean, there's going to be more insulin involved if you're eating carbohydrates, but insulin causes everything to grow. It causes, muscle tissue to grow. It causes fat tissue to grow. It causes cancer cell growth. It causes everything to grow. But you don't have to have insulin to build muscle. You can do that just simply with eating enough food, enough protein, and then eliciting enough stimulus to create a state of muscle protein synthesis.
As a natural bodybuilder, how much lean mass did you put on in a year?
Well, when I first started, I put on quite a bit because all of that was a new stimulus to my body. Like, it had never
Yeah.
been subjected to that load. So I probably put on 20 pounds my first year. I don't know if it was 20 pounds of lean tissue, but it was 20 pounds of pretty solid tissue. And then now, having lifted for, I guess, 15 plus years now, my muscles are much more mature in the sense that it's much more incremental gains year after year. So if I put on just a few pounds of muscle every single year now, I'm happy. But I look markedly different every time I compete because I give my body ample time between competitive seasons to add that lean tissue. I see a lot of people make the mistake of competing too frequently. And if you're
Yeah.
natural and you're spending, most of a year in a deficit to lean down for competition, you need to spend significantly more time at a surplus building tissue so that you look better the next time you step on stage. So I competed 5 times last year, and I probably won't compete again now for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, you're gonna be 4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
no competition. Yeah,
But when I compete in four to
just
five years, I'll look much better than I did this last go around for sure.
yeah, yeah, I bet. And how much? You said that you put 10 pounds, 20 pounds in
Hmm.
the first years. Okay, that was a new stimuli. But how much did you put in? Let's see. Do you have a goal in this 4 to 5 years? So you have how much more weight in the next show you compete?
So I typically compete at 155. If I can compete at 165 in 5 years, that would be great. I mean, I'm typically the leanest guy in my class, but I'm oftentimes the lightest guy in my class too, on the lower end of that weight range. I would love to be competitive, with the same level of conditioning that I'm currently bringing to the table, but just on the
Uh-oh.
but yeah, having simply more time to build that tissue. And if I put on 2 pounds of legitimate muscle tissue every year, then in 4 or 5 years I'll be looking markedly better the next time I step on stage.
Yeah. What about an enhanced athlete, an enhanced bodybuilder? How much weight they put in a year for a show
They can put on a lot
between
more.
shows?
Yeah, they can put on a lot more, and they can compete much more frequently because their recovery is better. Their hormones aren't really ever messed up because they're taking it in exogenously. That's why they oftentimes do compete every single year, and they'll put on 10, 15, 20 pounds every single year because they're being aggressive with that drug use. But that's definitely not the case in natural bodybuilding. With natural bodybuilding, if you're
Mm.
a seasoned lifter and you put on 2 pounds a year, then you're doing good.
And 2 pounds a year, it's amazing if you think about your health
Yeah.
because you're not using any drugs. You're using just food, rest, and training. So that's real muscle mass. Let's say like that.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like 2 pounds, like if you go to the grocery store and you pick up a pound of meat, like that's a pretty good chunk of
Yeah,
meat right there. That's a lot of muscle. So if you put on
yeah.
two of those over your body, that's a noticeable difference.
Yeah. And what's the main difference between the natural bodybuilding and enhanced bodybuilding besides the so-called enhanced drugs? You have do you have to do that kind of doping tests and tests to see if you are using something like that?
Yeah, so natural federations, every federation is a little bit different, but like for the WNBF, which is the one that I've gotten a pro card status in, they've got a pretty strict regimen. Like you cannot have used any drugs, anything on the banned list for 10 plus years, or else you're banned from competing.
10
Um,
plus years.
Yeah, pretty good while. And then
Yeah.
they'll do a urinalysis test for the winners of their class. They'll do a polygraph test for every competitor before they compete, and then they'll do random drug testing throughout the year as well. So they take it pretty seriously, which is good.
Yeah, that's very serious indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 plus years. So you if you use steroids anytime in your life, problem you don't compete with that federation.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy too because like if you use steroids and you build a bunch of muscle tissue and then you get off of the steroids, like your body still has that muscle memory, so to speak. So you still
Yeah,
benefit from that steroid use for years later. So it makes sense that they would have such a long ban because otherwise it's just not really an even playing field.
yeah, you're right. Why is it still believed that gaining muscle mass only happen if you have a lot of carbs? Why is that this myth that insisting not to die?
Well, it's probably twofold. One is that the assumption is that you have to have an abundance of insulin and spike insulin in order to cause growth, but you don't have to do that to build muscle. And the other is because so many people are, under the assumption that that's where your energy comes from. So if you're taking in carbohydrates, that's where you're getting energy to train harder. and give that body stimulus and reason to grow. But once you become fat adapted and you're not using carbohydrates for energy, that becomes a moot point as well, because you're obviously getting your energy from other sources, i.e. dietary fat and stored fat, ketones. So, once you become well-versed in fat metabolism, you recognize that there's no inherent need for carbohydrates in the context of building muscle.
So your diet doesn't have any carbs, or you eat some carbs sometimes.
No, I haven't had a carbohydrate-based meal in 9+ years now. Like, I'll have some trace carbs that are present in eggs or heavy cream, or the liver, so a little bit of stored glycogen in like liver or something like that. And I'll have some trace carbs in vegetables, but I honestly don't eat very many vegetables. Like, I'm pretty much meat and keto bricks is the majority of my calories. So you certainly don't. I don't have that many carbohydrates coming in on a daily basis at all.
That's interesting. That's it. And can you say that eating excess carbohydrates is a shortcut to gaining muscles in a non-physiological way? Because if you think about our evolutionary past, if you think about our ancestors, we didn't have much carbs day to day basis. We
Yeah.
have protein, we have fat, but we didn't have carbs. So that time we two weren't big enough because we have to hunt, and if I have two muttling mass, I have to eat much. I have to eat more and more calories, and I have to go out to hunt more. And when I go out, I can hunt, but I can be hunted too.
Yeah.
So we have to, our ancestors have to make some balance between muscle mass and agility and things like that. So, uh, 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 do you think that eating more carbs can make you gain more muscle? Is that a kind of a hack to do it in a super physiological way?
I don't necessarily think that it would cause more muscle with all else equal. And even if it does, it's a very small increase. And in the context of bodybuilding, even if you do gain a slight increase in muscle from carbs, you're also likely going to gain an increase in fat from those carbs. So when you
Yeah.
diet down for a show and you have to diet down more aggressively to cut that additional fat, you are likely going to start burning additional muscle tissue as well. So at the end of the day, it's pretty much like a wash between not having them or having them from a muscle generation standpoint. So I've always opted to avoid them because I don't think it makes that much of a significant difference between the rate at which I'm able to build more lean tissue.
Yeah, yeah, and the we know that the muscle can recruit some
Glycogen.
glycosis, yeah, glycogen, yeah,
Yeah.
and it can recruit from the blood to gain weight and replenish the glycogen,
Mm-hmm.
and without insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And so the carbs aren't really necessary if you can if the muscle works without insulin.
Yeah, I mean, you totally don't have to have carbohydrates. I mean, there are zero dietary requirements for carbohydrates. I mean, the brain needs some glucose, but it's able to derive the little that it does need from gluconeogenesis, tapping into amino acids that you ingest and in muscle tissue. So like you don't have to consume carbohydrates to meet that demand. And then as far as
Mhm.
muscle glycogen is concerned, once you become fat adapted, your body becomes increasingly efficient at preserving muscle glycogen, but then also replenishing muscle glycogen from, again, the amino acids that you consume, and also, from the glycerol backbone of the fats you consume, the lipids you consume. So yeah, there's no inherent need to consume carbohydrates.
Yeah, yeah, and there are some people, some persons that say that the neoglycogenesis or glyconeogenesis is a process that forces the liver. Do you think that's a true fact?
I mean, gluconeogenesis is a totally natural phenomenon. Like our body's been doing that since we became a species. Like it's not a concern at all. The problem with gluconeogenesis is if you are not consuming carbohydrates for energy and you are not consuming ample dietary fat for energy, then your body is going to be forced to use gluconeogenesis to derive glucose from proteins as the primary source of energy. And that's not the most efficient substrate for fuel. So gluconeogenesis is totally normal, totally natural, should not be avoided. But I would not recommend using gluconeogenesis as the primary driver for energy. So you need to make sure you're either getting your energy from carbs or fats and not exclusively from proteins.
Yeah, and you said that there were three requirements to gain lean mass:
Mm-hmm.
high calorie diet, a surplus of calories, and the training, and the correct amount of rest
And protein, ample protein. Yeah.
and protein. So you have to have energy and protein surplus because you have the protein turnover
Mm-hmm.
in your muscle. You have to have a high quality train. If you don't train the right way, if you don't make the right stimuli to your muscle, you will not gain lean mass, and you have to have the correct amount of rest.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. If you check those boxes, then you're priming your body to add more lean tissue. You don't have to have carbohydrates in that context by any means. So yeah, if you're doing those things, then you can be confident that you're checking the boxes to build muscle, and then just observe, your gym performance. Like if you're training with progressive overload and you're giving your body reason to grow more lean tissue to accompany that increased demand in strength training, then you should see all of your markers improve. Like you should see your strength improve, your ability to handle the weight properly improve, and if all those are happening, then you can feel confident you're actually building additional muscle tissue.
Yeah, and I will add, if I may, patience,
Yeah.
because you have to have patience. I begin I don't think I have a career in bodybuilding. I don't have. I'm just a guy who likes to go to the gym, but since 1909 to 19 sorry 2009 to 2019. I gain about 10 kilos. That can be 20, 25 pounds, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And most people that see me now thinks that I gain weight in 2 or 3 years, but it was 10 years to gain the weight that I'm on. I'm in 75 kilos. That would be 160 pounds, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I was 65 kilos. So I use all these three, but sometimes you go to the gym, you train hard, you get off the gym, you look in the mirror, and nothing's happening, and you think, oh my god, that's not for me. What do you say to people that are in that situation?
You definitely just have to fall in love with the journey itself. Like I only compete, like I said, every few years, so I don't do it for the competitions themselves. And there's not any money in natural bodybuilding, so I'm not doing it for the money. I just love the sport. I love the journey. I love the lifestyle. Like I love seeing progress take place over time, and it does take a lot of time, but it builds habits that are very conducive to a healthy lifestyle. Like I'm very cognizant of how much sleep I'm getting, the food quality that I'm consuming, the amount of the food that I'm eating, the training that I'm doing, the movement patterns, the mobility, the flexibility, the recovery. Like all of these things are very important things to me because I'm a natural bodybuilder. And if I just build these proper habits into place, my day to day improves, and the compounding effect of that daily activity over a lifetime makes a significant difference. You'll never notice a difference necessarily in the acute, day to day basis, but if you extrapolate that over, years, it's hard to argue that there's a meaningful difference being made.
Yeah, it's small increments day after day after day. So in the course of 10 years, in my case, you look at the mirror, you look at the photos. I look at the photo in 2009, I look at the photo now, and I say, whoa, that's a huge difference. But
Hmm.
it's that superpower that you have when you do little things every day, every day, every day. You're gonna increment that. Uh,
Yeah.
what about the main differences between a keto diet for bodybuilding and a traditional diet? Okay, you have the carbs that you don't eat, but you have to tune in the fat and the protein for something very specific to your case.
Hmm.
Tell us a little about your off phase diet when you are bulking,
Hmm.
and your cut phase diet when you are in cutting, preparing for a contest.
Yeah, so basically, from a high level view, I eat the same foods whether I'm in a building phase or a cutting phase. It's just the amounts of those foods that change. And when I'm in a building phase like I am now, the main thing is just to consume at a surplus, make sure I'm eating ample protein, which for me, I try to target at least 200 grams of protein a day, and then normally north of 3,000 calories a day. Um, that pretty much checks those nutritional boxes there to optimize for muscle growth. And then in a cutting phase, what I'll typically do is I've got like a 7 phase process that I've kind of mapped out in my book and my protocol, but it basically starts at about my maintenance intake, and then I'll start with a very high fat ratio of about 80% of my calories coming from fat, which is very counter to what you would find in conventional bodybuilding diets.
Yeah.
But by starting
Yeah.
at that higher fat ratio, I can really force my body to become incredibly efficient at metabolizing fat for fuel, and that's going to bode well as I get deeper and deeper into the cut. So I'll start that higher fat ratio. So 80% of calories coming from fat, relatively moderate protein at that intake, and then very low carbohydrate. And then from there, over several weeks, I increase my protein incrementally while simultaneously dropping my dietary fat until I find my own unique protein threshold. That's gonna be a little bit different for everybody, but that's typically at the point where you start to notice some more GI distress, some more brain fog, a down regulation of ketone production, increasing blood glucose at a baseline. And then from there, your body's becoming, a little bit more dependent upon gluconeogenesis as you're getting into a deficit and you have a surplus of protein coming in relative to what would be optimal for fat metabolism. So once I hit that threshold, I'll start dropping both my protein and my dietary fat. So overall calories are continuing to decline. And then at that point, I'll start introducing ketogenic caloric refeeds because they'll be pretty low in my calories at that point. And the refeeds for me in a keto state are just basically an increase in overall fats and protein. So no increase of carbohydrates; those stay minimal throughout. So I'll increase these refeed days, once, sometimes twice a week with a bolus of both fat and protein. And then that pretty much puts me up through the competition. I'll tweak my electrolytes a little bit, increase sodium a little bit on these refeed days to bring out a certain look. And then from there, I transition more into a reverse diet so I can kind of return to a healthy intake of food. So increasing food overall while simultaneously dropping those refeeds, but increasing both fat and protein until I get back up to a healthy, manageable, sustainable intake over time.
Yeah. And do you compete with what fat mass, fat percentage?
So when I get down lean for competition, I get down to like this last go round, I got down to 3.9% body fat via DEXA. So
3.9.
yeah, pretty
That's
lean.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
pretty lean.
yeah, the calipers had me at like 2.8%, but going off the DEXA, it had me at 3.94%. So pretty much as lean as you can get until you die.
Yeah, that's yeah, and when you are off season, you go to 12%, 15%.
Yeah, 12 or 15. I mean, if I'm being really aggressive, I'll get to 17, but usually between 12 and 15% is kind of where I like to hang out. I'm at about 15% right now.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little about the keto brick,
Yeah.
your meal performance meal that has 1,000 calories. That's really a brick. If you can,
Yeah.
you can build a house if you want with that.
You could. Yeah, so the brick was something that I formulated out of my own need for a streamlined source of nutrition during my 2017 competition prep, which is my first prep doing a ketogenic approach. And at that point, keto had not really blown up to the point that it is now, so there wasn't any products on the market. So I just set out to create my own, basically. The keto brick was born, and I was documenting my prep on YouTube. And people kept asking about it, asked how to make it, where to get it. So I basically just turned it into a product alongside my girlfriend at the time, wife now. And we've kept production in-house from day one. We make these things by hand, and we ship them all over the world. So yeah, they're 1,000 calories each. Great source of dietary fat in the form of cacao butter is the main ingredient, so really high in stearic
Mm.
acid. And then we've got some that use a whey protein, some that use a plant-based protein. We're working on some that use an animal protein that does not include whey for people that are sensitive to whey. So yeah, it's 1,000 calories, and I eat one every single day.
Yeah, that's a very very interesting form that you can uh, get that surplus, that calorie surplus, so you don't
Hmm.
feel too full. Because
Yeah,
one of the things the ketogenic does is because when the ketogenic diet, you feel satiating when you eat. Uh,
totally,
uh, uh,
totally.
I'll tell an example. Yesterday was Mom's Day here in Brazil, and we went to a barbecue. I ate about 700 to 1 kilo of meat,
Hmm.
and man, I didn't have any other meal, and I'm still not hungry. So if I want to get 3,000 calories every day, I have to have some strategy to eat that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brazil, that's where the Brazilian steakhouses are come
Yeah,
from. Like you get all
yeah,
those great foods cooked
yeah,
right there on on the flames. So eating 2.2 pounds, so a kilo of meat is pretty easy to do when you get quality meat like that.
yeah. But how do you overcome this satiety that the keto diet gives us?
So it's interesting. It's definitely more like I feel like I have a much closer relationship to what true satiety is now that I am following a ketogenic diet, because when you're eating processed foods and sugars that are hyper palatable, your blood sugar and insulin levels are much more volatile, which is going to kind of skew your body's natural signals of satiety. You don't really have that with keto. But my metabolism is crazy high, man. Like I could eat 6,000 calories effortlessly and still be hungry. So I still have to kind of
Whoa.
keep that in check. But yeah, it's kind of wild the amount of food that I can consume. So I'm always hungry, but I think that's probably just in part because of my training load and just stress, and I probably don't sleep as much as I should, which will increase my hunger as well. But yeah, relative to a traditional carbohydrate based meal, I feel like I've got a much better sense of what true satiety is for sure.
Yeah, and shift gears just a little to your training. How is your training schedule? You train one single muscle per day. You train two muscles. How do you schedule a training? And do you do some variations, or you just going harder and harder and get more weight?
I used to have a specific body part per day. I used to train with a body part split like that, but currently I've been following a full body style routine. So I'll train every
Oh,
single muscle group every single day, and I typically train 5 days a week. And I'll typically pick one exercise per body part per day, and those change from day to day. But I feel like my body's responding very, very well to the full body routine. It's getting much more training frequency, which I think is good,
yeah.
especially as a natural athlete. And since I'm only targeting one exercise per body part, there's not an obsessive amount of intensity in a given day, but that extrapolated out throughout the course of the week, I think, is an ample stimulus for causing growth. So yeah, I've been really enjoying the full body routine that I've been doing here lately.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And do you do any cardio?
Yeah, I'll do cardio normally in the form of a stairmaster. I like the stairmaster because it's easy to standardize. Like when I'm in a prep, I'll just gradually scale that up. I'll start with the minimum viable dose and then just increase that over time as my calories drop. But yeah, stairmaster is my preferred form of cardio. I'll oftentimes, like now in the building phase, like I'll do trail runs just intermittently throughout the week because I enjoy it. I'm not really trying to lean down in a building phase necessarily, but just simply doing the trail runs is a way to maintain cardiovascular health and just get outside more.
Interesting. And besides keto brick, do you use any supplement?
Not really, man. I'll have creatine, and I'll have a brick a day creatine, and then like just some basic stuff like vitamin D when I remember to take it, and then electrolytes. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. Some people wouldn't even consider that a supplement, but pretty basic. Like I am pretty minimal with my supplementation, simply because I really just try to emphasize the quality of the food. And then within the natural federations, they have a pretty exhaustive banned substance list. And rather than obsessing about if I'm taking something that's cleared or not, I just don't take anything and not to worry about it.
Yeah, that's great. And you said that in your cutting phase, you do some tweaks with your electrolytes.
Hmm.
What what the main focus of that tweaks, and how do you manipulate them? It's by using water, or how do you do it?
Yeah, so electrolytes super important. Having the proper ratio of sodium to potassium to fluid intake is going to ensure that your muscles have hydration within the muscle cells themselves, so you have that fuller look. And then you want to ensure that you have as little fluid in the subcutaneous layer of skin as possible, so that your skin appears thinner and you bring out as much vascularity as possible. And if all things are equal, you're able to kind of get that dialed in and look great year round. But then, to really peak for a competition, you want to kind of bring that out even more. And it's a fleeting phenomenon. Like, you can't maintain that look forever because your body is going to stabilize its innate electrolyte equilibrium balance. But for a short period, 24 to 48 hours, you can kind of finesse things a little bit to bring out that more prominent look. So typically, I'll achieve that by increasing my sodium intake by 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams during my refeed the day before I step on stage. And what that does, it takes that fluid that's in my subcutaneous layer of skin, draws it into the muscle tissue so that my muscles appear fuller, my skin appears thinner, and I have more vascularity. And then I'll compete with that look. And then, within a day or so, it kind of stabilizes from there. But during that finite period of time, I'm able to peak properly and just bring out that more prominent look.
That's great. That's great. And after the competition, you go all in a keto meal with no control, or you maintain some kind of rule to gain weight in a stable manner. How do you do your pause workout, pause show meal?
Yeah, so my post show meal, I keep it keto at all times. Like, I do not include carbohydrates. I don't go out to eat and have a big, cheesecake or pizza or something like that. I'll keep it keto year round. But what I'll typically do is during my, immediate post show celebratory meal, I'll have pretty much as much meat as I want. So I'll typically go to a Brazilian steakhouse, which is all you can eat
Yeah.
meat
Okay.
here, and then I'll do that. And then, I think after this last show, I did 5 shows. I didn't have my celebratory meal until after the final one was over, but I went to a Brazilian steakhouse and I ate, 7,500 calories in meat that night. So quite a lot of meat. But then after that, I get back on track and I just, kind of gradually increase my intake over time and try to average about 1 to 2 pounds of weight gained per week, increasing fats and proteins. And then once I get to a high enough intake that my body pretty well stabilizes and I'm back to a healthy body fat percentage, then I'll just make sure that I'm eating at that ample surplus with ample protein to have a successful building phase. But I try to always keep it in pretty well check.
Yeah. So you never leave keto.
No, I haven't deviated from keto in 8, 9 years now.
Wow, that's very interesting. How do you deal with the social pressure, if there is any, in your family, friends, and things like that?
There was in the
That's
beginning, but once you do it for as long as I've done it, and you have the success with it that I have, like, people are understanding, they're accepting. They just recognize that, hey, I'm the keto guy, and I'm not going to eat those foods, and they're pretty respectful of that decision. In the beginning, though, like, they try to pressure you into consuming those things, but oftentimes that pressure stems from insecurities on their own part. And at the end of the day, like, I look at the relationships in my life, the people in my life, and if that relationship is built solely on the types of foods that I'm consuming, it's probably not a great relationship to begin with. Like, there should be much more of a deeper bond there than just the foods we consume. So if they're going to pressure me to the point of it hindering the relationship, then it wasn't much relationship to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. I have the privilege to have my whole family. They are not, I would say, keto, but they try to be at least low carb.
Yeah, it's
So
good.
yeah, so my father is 84 years old. My mother is 77, and they are both low carbers. My sister, my brother, and my wife who is pregnant, and
That's awesome.
yeah, and we try to do some. They try to do something like low carb, sometimes keto, but I'm the only carnivore in the family, and I still have some backlash from friends that as you say, don't don't know if they are really friends, but the friends that invite me to eat pizza and things like that. I always thought something like this. If I am there, that's the most important thing, to chat, to talk, not to eat.
Yeah.
If I don't eat but I have water, sparkling water, that's okay. I'm gonna talk, I'm gonna chat with everyone. I don't have to be eating so I can socialize.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's a strange thing, and I mean, it's really prominent here in the states as well. But like, there's so much focus on food and not so much the actual relationships. Like when we have social gatherings, like the emphasis is just placed on what we're going to eat as opposed to what we're going to do, what we're going to talk about. You know, how you've been, how's life.
Yeah,
Like that should be the focal point, not necessarily the food. Like the food can be great for sure, but that should never be the centerpiece.
yeah. I think like that too. And how what are your plans for the future? uh
Yeah.
tell
So
a little about your business, and tell us about your coaching too. I think someone may be interested in your activities.
yeah, so I've got a million different things going on right now. I've got the keto bricks. Obviously, we're growing that business. I've got the coaching. I've been doing that for forever. So one-on-one coaching there. I'm working on a course that basically is a very comprehensive online course. It takes everything I've learned over the years and puts it into a video format course that people can follow for ketogenic bodybuilding specifically. So I'm super excited about that. That will launch probably the end of May if all goes well. And then I've got lots of other things in the works, some of which may take me to Brazil. So in your neck of the
Yeah.
woods there, which I'm excited about. But yeah, just lots of things going on, all within the health and nutrition space.
Yeah, great. Do you do some lectures in these low carb events?
Yeah. So I speak at several of the conferences here. I'm actually going to be speaking at Hack Your Health conference here in just a few weeks. So I'll be speaking on two different panels there, and then I've got I'm typically speaking at conferences more or less every month, every other month, especially during the summer and fall seasons. So pretty busy with the conferences, but I always enjoy those because you're meeting people face to face as opposed to just online. So I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoy the
Yeah.
conferences.
Let me ask you something, Robert. As a bodybuilder and as a ketogenic bodybuilder, you probably do some blood work. Always do some blood work to see how was your levels. How is your cholesterol levels, and are you a hyper responder? Are you familiar with this concept that
Yeah.
created by Dave Feldman? Are you a hyper responder?
Technically, I'm not by his criteria, but it's interesting. I think he and I had him on my podcast just a few weeks ago, and we dove deep into that. It's probably because of just the training load that I'm doing, because I'm using so much of the lipids through my training for energy that I'm not having just these crazy elevated levels of LDL. But I mean, my LDL is high by traditional standards. However, that LDL in the context of my also high HDL and very low triglycerides, my actual cholesterol ratio is very good. So yeah, I'm not concerned about my blood work. It's all within healthy ranges there. And then I do pretty comprehensive blood work in general. So I get my hormones tested. I get my C-reactive protein tested. I get all these tested. I get my electrolytes tested. The prep itself, getting down to 3.9% body fat, tanked my testosterone. But now that has
Yeah.
been increasing quite a bit since I've been eating more and putting back on a healthy amount of body fat. Like your sex hormones are very tightly linked to how much body fat you have, and when you're that lean, you're going to see a pretty significant drop in healthy testosterone levels. But that's pretty much all recovered since transitioning to a reverse diet now.
Yeah. Do you think that as a natural bodybuilder, your testosterone is higher than, let's see, a normal person that eats a traditional diet and trains? Not talking about the enhanced athletes, but a normal person that don't eat ketogenic diet, your testosterone will gonna be a little higher than that.
It's interesting. Like, I think a lot of testosterone is lifestyle factors, environmental factors, and also genetics. And I think, for me, it's hard to tell too because, everyone's going to be a little bit different. But me in my pre-keto days, eating a traditional diet versus me now with keto, I definitely think my hormones have improved at baseline overall. But I mean, my testosterone tanked, when I was in that prep. And then now at baseline, it's not drastically high. I mean, my total testosterone is normally between 500 and 700. I'm 32 years old, so a pretty normal range, I would say,
Yeah,
but not
yeah,
not significantly high like you would see some people.
yeah, yeah. Okay, Mr. Roberts, I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. Your book is great. I
Thank you.
am still reading. I'm still reading it, and I have very nice ideas to deal with my patients. I'm a nutritionist here in Brazil, and I have some patients that want to do a keto diet to gain lean mass, and I use some tweaks in your book. That's very interesting. And do you have any final message for the people who are
Well, first of
listening?
all, yeah, I just really appreciate the opportunity. I'm very passionate about this diet, this lifestyle, this as a way to just find health and well-being and vibrancy in life. So I think what you're doing in Brazil is amazing. If there's anything I could do to help move the needle in the right direction, by all means, let me know. I think the more people find out about this as a lifestyle and just incorporate it from a health standpoint, the better off they'll be. And so, yeah, I just really commend you for doing the work that you're doing. I thank you so much.
Oh, great, great. Thank you very much for your time. And I see you when you be in Brazil in Bahia. Let's see if you
Yes,
can make. I have great friends in Bahia, and there are some there are doctors and I have one of my best friends. He is a carnivore for almost 10 years, and I think it would be great to go to a Brazilian steakhouse over there.
I would absolutely love that, and I 100% intend to eat at a Brazilian steakhouse while I'm in Brazil for sure.
Yeah. So please, when you come here, tell us that we can see if we can meet each other.
I'd love that. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.